Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Will there actually be a second stimulus check? When will it arrive, and will it include retroactive unemployment pay? Let's take a look at a flowchart I put together that consolidates all of the latest from the last few weeks of negotiations into a few likely scenarios, which will also let us know when we're likely to see a potential second stimulus check. Just a quick reminder, the Black Friday sale is going to continue on until Cyber Monday. I've extended it because I've been buried in people asking me for bundle up coupon codes via the email. So if you want to check out the programs down below on building your wealth with real estate, stocks, making YouTube videos, property management, sales, check them out. They're amazing. You can email me at kevin@meetkevin.com for a special bundle code if you want to get more than one course as well. Okay, let's jump on over here to the flowchart that we've got and see what we think about this. So first, in my opinion, a second stimulus package is 99% likely. But unfortunately, the odds for a second stimulus check are much lower. Let's use some math to figure that out. That might sound like a far cry because we have been sitting around watching Congress for 6 months do absolutely nothing since they passed their stimulus 3.5 package, loosely redefining some of the terms of the PPP loan program. However, there are so many fiscal cliffs that we face that a second stimulus package is a must for the country. But what it might actually include could look a little different. So let's follow the flow chart here. First, there's a tipping point, and the tipping point has to do with January 5th. This is when the Georgia runoff election is. This date will create a very large tipping point for stimulus negotiations. Before January 5th, 2020, in my opinion, we have a 65% chance of seeing some form of a bill due to the expiring fiscal cliffs that we're facing. The eviction cliff we're facing, the unemployment cliff we're facing, along with the other cliffs related to student loan forbearance and CARES Act funding flexibility for states. So before January 5th, we might see a stimulus package. However, it might or it might not include stimulus checks. Now, obviously, but let's look at the two scenarios here. So here's what's going on. First, we know that no party is going to completely give in to the other party before January 5th. That's because no party wants to look weak in the face of the Georgia runoff. This means we're going to have Republicans and Democrats trying to go into the January 5th Georgia Senate runoff, which runoff will dictate the balance of power in Congress for the next 2 years. And therefore, both sides are going to go into this trying to look as strong as possible. Republicans need to go in looking strong. Democrats need to go in looking strong. As a result of this, we can say this with very probable odds. There probably will not be a $500 billion stimulus skinny bill, which wouldn't include stimulus checks anyway, because this would signify a Democratic loss. That's very unlikely to happen right before the Georgia runoff election. However, we probably also will not see a $2.2 to $2.4 trillion HEROES Act, which Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden are proponents of, because this would signal a Republican loss and weakness going into the Georgia January 5th runoff election. Therefore, the only option of a stimulus package prior to January 5th, which I believe this is probably in the neighborhood of 65% likely, the only option we actually have is a new bipartisan compromise package until the new balance of power is determined by Congress. But this comes with two possible variants. First, an extension bill. This to me is more likely than the other option. An extension bill is simply kicking the can down the road. Think about it this way. Extending the CDC eviction moratorium that ends December 31st. Extending student loan forbearance, extending a second round of PPP funding. This would potentially have an asterisk in this, since this might end up getting caught up in future negotiations. But certainly kicking the can down the road on the eviction ban, student loan forbearance, and at least providing access to state unemployment beyond January 31st. Because by January 31st, the first 39 weeks of state-funded unemployment expire for people on normal unemployment, and access for people who are on pandemic unemployment, which are people who are self-employed or have a side hustle or are gig workers, that opportunity goes away December 31st as well. Now, that state or the federal boost, that extra $600 per week, or that $400 per week we saw with the FEMA boost, that might not make it into an extension, though it is possible. It is possible, and we'll put an asterisk on the things that are meh. It is possible that we will see Congress reallocate the $454 billion that the Treasury Department has towards PPP funding and maybe a short unemployment boost period that goes retroactively to maybe November or December 1st and then through January, February. Basically, this is just a kick the can down the road bill. In my opinion, this should be very easy for Congress to do, although I think all of us just want to vomit at the idea of hearing that something should be easy for Congress because they're freaking idiots. But beyond that, I do believe this is necessary, and no president wants to either inherit or have this happen on their watch. An eviction crisis, people not having access to unemployment, and even the student loan forbearance. These are things that Donald Trump is not going to want on his watch potentially the last 3 weeks of his presidency. And it's not something that Biden is going to want the first day he goes into office. So both of the presidents are likely aligned on this. And we know that Congress is clamoring to prevent these cliffs from occurring. This is why I believe some form of extension bill is very likely by January 5th. And this doesn't mean that anybody lost. It doesn't mean Democrats lost. It doesn't mean Republicans lost. It just means we're picking this fight up later, but we're not going to let people suffer while we try to posture going into the Georgia January 5th runoff election. And this is despite the fact that millions of people have already been suffering waiting for the incompetent Congress to actually function. The 30% likely option, I believe this is less likely, but it would include stimulus checks, would be a compromise package of potentially around $1 trillion. This would include everything we just talked about in the extension bill, but it would also include some form of extension to unemployment payments. Now remember, this is before January 5th, so this means Democrats and Republicans don't want to appear like they're losing yet. So that's why this one is less likely, because Democrats are going to say $400 to $450 per week for unemployment is a loss. Unless they potentially brand this as, look, we're just doing this for 30 days. Give us 30 days. We'll do this as a short-term bridge. We know that both sides are a fan of extending unemployment. The boost level is debated between $300 to $600. Stimulus checks, both sides are proponents of $1,200 stimulus checks to the same group of people who qualified the last time, plus $500 for dependents. The details in terms of who would be able to garnish this or not, banks, child support, would people with ITIN numbers get it? These are things that will be hotly debated. Then liability protections, but the only way liability protections from COVID will actually make it into a compromise bill would be as if there are also consumer and worker protections. Democrats are okay with liability protections as long as there are consumer and worker protections. Funding for schools, desperately needed. Funding for state and local governments. State and local governments are at least $300 billion in the hole right now. Funding for testing, tracing, treatments, vaccines, and distribution. Funding for food aid programs and possibly rental relief, so that way we're not just kicking the can down the road on the CDC eviction ban, but we're also providing relief so that back tenants can catch up with their back rent. So zooming out here for a moment, before January 5th, I believe we have a 65% chance of seeing something. However, in my opinion, we are much more likely to just see an extension bill, something that just kicks the can down the road until we know the balance of power in the Senate. There is the smaller possibility that we do get something before January 5th, and it does provide stimulus checks. Though I expect that to be the smaller likelihood because, again, Democrats and Republicans do not want to feel like they lost. Let's go ahead to the other options. Here are the other options. January 5th. This is after January 5th, so a 35% chance. Afterwards, we potentially have a Republican retained control of the Senate. I believe that this is 60% likely. That means I do believe it is slightly more likely that the Republicans will win the Senate, and I only believe that because that's how the balance of power played out before the runoff election. One Republican and one Democrat win, but that's not enough to give Democrats the 50-50 tie they need. That would leave the balance of power 49 for Democrats and independents and 51 for Republicans. That's how the vote fell the last time. I expect it to be similar, but only slightly. Things could change. A lot of money, over $300 million are being spent just on campaigning in Georgia for these 2 Senate seats. And that's just up to this point. It's probably going to go up, especially when Trump and Biden start campaigning in this area. Very, very big date, January 5th. If Republicans maintain control of the Senate, we are very likely to be essentially forced into a compromise package. This could be $1 trillion. It could be potentially up to $1.5 trillion. But if Republicans maintain control of the Senate, they will keep the cost of this stimulus package down. It is very likely that we will see exactly the same compromise package that we could have seen before January 5th if Republicans maintain control. So remember what we talked about here with this compromise here, the extension of unemployment, the stimulus checks, liability protections with consumer worker protections, funding for schools, state and local governments, testing, tracing, treatment, food aid programs. We are very likely to see that. So you kind of see that no matter what happens, if it's before the election or afterwards, there's a good chance that we do get some kind of compromise package because Republican dominance is going to require that. Or maybe not dominance, but Republican power in the Senate will require that. They have power here, and we're either going to get a kick the can down the road bill, or we'll get that compromise package. Or if they maintain power, then that compromise package becomes even more likely. Now, if Democrats take control of the Senate, I give this a 40% chance because it means flipping both of those seats in the Senate. However, now keep this in mind as well, that does not mean Democrats will have complete and utter control. They will have a 50-50 vote balance, which means Kamala Harris can come in and tie-break. However, most bills require 60 votes to break a stalemate. However, because of a 50-50 balance, that means that Democrats will have control over appointing judges or confirming cabinet members, passing potentially tax-related spending bills. And that leverage over Republicans will likely mean that Democrats will be able to get a larger bill that does need 60 votes for stimulus, but they'll be able to use their other leverages to get this, my expectation. This, though, would lead to the largest stimulus package, is the Democratic control after the Georgia January 5th runoff of 40%. This would likely lead to a more substantial bill, $1.5 to $2.4 trillion. It's likely to include one stimulus check. It is likely to include the largest unemployment boost. It wouldn't be a surprise to see the boost be somewhere between $500 to $600 with retroactivity. We've already heard that Nancy Pelosi wants unemployment checks to be retroactive through the first week of January. You would be getting a check for January, October, November, December, and January. That you would be getting that check in January for unemployment. That's 5 months of retroactive pay, plus the boost probably going forward through the end of March, or maybe even through the summer. Some form of rental relief to get us through the summer. We really got to get through the summer to get through this pandemic. The largest amount of funding for food aid and support, and the largest support for state and local spending, mental health support, healthcare support services, Indian reservation support, territory support, and so on and so forth. This is where we get the most likely option. Now, if we kind of blend these odds here, let's just for a moment zoom out and understand the odds that we have looking at this from a zoomed out POV. So the first odd that we got was that we would have some form of a package by January 5th. This, we believe, is 65% possible. However, it is mostly likely that we're going to get a 70%, or it is 70% likely that if this happens, if we get a bill, that it would end up being an extension bill. Something that just ends up making the can get kicked down the road, so to speak. And if we multiply these two odds, we get an ultimate odd, or like the ultimate result, that the stimulus package we see over the next few months is some kind of kick the can down the road bill. And by multiplying these odds, I get about 45.5% in terms of a chance here. Then we've got the potential for a compromise package. Well, that's 65% times a 30% chance, which means all in all, this is really only a 19.5% possibility. So 19.5% chance that we get something before January 5th and include stimulus checks. So stimulus checks before January 5th, probably in the neighborhood of only 19.5% possible, because we're more likely, about 45.5%, to see a kick the can down the road bill. Oh, and I notice you can't see 45.5%. There we go. So then the other option is waiting until the Georgia 5th runoff, and let's say that Republicans maintain control. If we multiply these statistics, we're likely to get a stimulus check package that includes stimulus checks with about a 21% chance after January 5th. And Democrats maintaining control, 0.35% times 0.4%. Democrats maintaining control and getting us the largest potential stimulus check package would probably fall in around 14% as a chance. So this means we have a 45% chance of a kick the can down the road bill. We have a 19.5% chance of getting stimulus checks before January 5th. We have a 21% chance of getting stimulus checks after. Well, actually, we could add these two together, right? Because both of these do include stimulus checks. So if we add both of those together, we get a 35% chance of getting stimulus checks after. Obviously, these percentages here add up to 100%. If you add up the 45% chance of a kick the can down the road bill, the 19% chance of the compromise package, 21% and 14%, this adds up to 100%. So this gives us all of our likelihoods here. Out of all of these odds, the fact of us actually getting stimulus checks before or after January 5th, in my expectation, is 19.5 plus 21 plus 14. So 19.5 plus 21 plus 14, because in all of those scenarios, we do end up getting a stimulus check. This means the odds of us getting a stimulus check, in my opinion, are 54.5%, either slightly before or slightly after the January 5th runoff. Once we go past this period of time, though, and people start getting vaccinated, I think the odds of actually getting a stimulus check will start going down. So right now, 54.5% chance of seeing a stimulus check package. Again, to bottom line it here at the end, we have a 45% chance of seeing some form of an extension bill. We have a 19.5% chance before January 5th of seeing a stimulus check package before January 5th. We have a 35% chance of seeing stimulus checks after January 5th. So the odds go up, which gives us that combined 54.5% chance. But what kind of package we get will be entirely dependent on whether Republicans control or Democrats control the Senate. So there you go. This is based on all of the quotes and research and every single day updating that I could possibly put together on stimulus checks and the progression that we have going forward. These are the odds that I believe we will see a second stimulus check and when we might actually see it. If you found this helpful, consider, well, checking out the programs down below or sharing this with somebody you think you would find this helpful. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing as well. And folks, we'll see you in the next video.